Hello and welcome to SEGA News Bits. I'm Barry. With me is George.
Hello, everybody.
And joining us, we have a guest. We have FlareHabanero.
Hey, pleasure to meet you.
So we have Flare. He's a writer for us, and he does other things on the internet. But that's not important. The only thing we care about is SEGAbits and Puyo Puyo Tetris. And so Puyo Puyo Tetris was announced to be coming to the Nintendo Switch and PS4, and it's coming west. So this was a lot of stuff that we learned during, but mostly after the Nintendo Switch event. Is that correct? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, basically the majority of information came after the Nintendo Switch event. Like, in the event itself, it was briefly shown in the montage with the other third-party titles. But we didn't learn about the blunt of the information until after that, like the fact that it's officially being localized, and it's not only coming to Nintendo Switch, but also the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're not going to get too into the Switch event. I thought that was kind of a mess on their part, just because of all these announcements that hit after the presentation. Like you'd think when Nagoshi would take the stage, instead of saying we are aware of the Nintendo Switch, he'd actually say Puyo Puyo Tetris is coming to the Nintendo Switch. You know, something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing I noticed with the Direct thing. It's like they weirdly downplayed the third-party stuff, despite them being their priority and whatnot.
Yeah, and so, but this game has been out for quite some time, correct?
Yes.
In Japan, yeah.
Yeah, specifically the PS Vita, PS3, Wii U, and 3DS versions have been around since February 2014. And later down the line, a PS4 and Xbox One came, which included all the DLC for free.
Okay, so give me the sales pitch on this game. Tell me what it's all about, why we should be excited about it, maybe even why we might not be excited about it if there are things you don't like about the game.
Okay, Puyo Puyo Tetris. Let's go into the context of both Puyo Puyo and Tetris first. Puyo Puyo and Tetris are both very famous puzzle series, albeit Tetris is much more well known outside of Japan. But in Japan, it's kind of started a revolutionary thing in the genre. Like, it had, unlike other puzzle games like at the time, like Tetris and Columns and whatnot, it had like a heavier emphasis on multiplayer. It had a cast of colorful, quirky characters, and that was enough to start a revolution of sorts during the 90s, and a lot of companies had their own take of the Puyo Puyo formula, including Tetris itself to an extent. So the fact that these two quote-unquote giants are together was a big deal in Japan, and it managed to catch attention outside of Japan.
Okay. One thing I thought was interesting about it was that, you know, I mean, obviously in the title, Puyo Puyo goes first, but Tetris is much more popular in the West. I guess Tetris Puyo Puyo sounds kind of bad, but in terms of what Nintendo fans were reacting to, like, I watched the it's the Cinemassacre one, but it's not James and Mike. It's Mike and his friend. And what I thought was interesting was them as Nintendo fanboys. They really latched onto the Tetris bit of it. And I mean, when you think of Tetris and its history with Nintendo, the Game Boy, obviously it was a big title there. And so I'm wondering if, as Sega fans, we're latching onto the Puyo Puyo name, but just about everyone else who's not aware of Puyo Puyo is like, oh wow, another Tetris game at launch. That's awesome. How old school is that?
Right. And I think one thing you got to keep in mind with this game in particular is that Tetris has been kind of in a rocky state lately. Like the infamous Tetris Ultimate and the Tetris mobile games with its transaction bullcrap and all that. So to have a straightforward, fun Tetris game is a plus by itself alone. But when you add in like another element like Puyo Puyo, that adds a unique twist to it that no other game in neither Puyo Puyo or Tetris have emulated.
So do these games combine, or do you switch off playing different styles?
It depends on the mode. For example, in the standard versus mode, you can either pick Puyo Puyo or Tetris. So for example, you can have a Puyo Puyo versus Puyo Puyo match, Tetris versus Tetris, or you can mix it up by having Puyo Puyo versus Tetris. Then there's other modes that kind of mix up the formula in some type of way. For example, there's swap mode, where every 30 seconds or so, whatever time you set, like you'll start with Puyo Puyo or Tetris, but after the time is over, you'll swap over. But a little twist is that anything in the background will still count as a chain, and you can combo off that. Or there's like Puyo Tetris, which literally mixes the two together. Like you drop both Puyos and Tetrahabaneros on a slightly larger board than normal.
Huh. That sounds strange. It's like playing hockey and soccer, I guess. The rules are slightly similar, but there's still differences.
Oh yeah, like a misconception people have to understand that Puyo Puyo and Tetris are very different, despite, Puyo Puyo being influenced by Tetris in the first place.
Interesting. George, you've been pretty quiet. What are your thoughts on this game?
What I've seen I like, but Sega never really brought it over. I was kind of disappointed. And I mean, it's probably a dispute with the Tetris license because it's held by a company that makes, I think, bad decisions. Because, I mean, like Flare said, the games have been kind of in the rut lately. So I think this is a good thing for both brands. I think this introduces Puyo Puyo to a Western audience since it's been absent for so long over here. And it opens up the ability to market future games like Puyo Chronicles or Chronicle.
And so this is really Puyo Puyo's grand reintroduction to the West, or I might even argue introduction, because I don't want to get too into the history of the franchise, but I'm trying to remember. Puyo Pop Fever was the localized name, and it only came to Europe, correct?
Actually, it came into both North America and Europe. However, certain versions were only available in Europe and or North America. For example, in North America, only the GameCube and DS versions were available.
I see. So it's kind of a Nintendo brand, at least over here, but it definitely did not have as big a push as it had in Japan. And I mean, even then, when you think of the Puyo Puyo name, this is one of the first times that a title has come to North America using Puyo Puyo outside of, I'm trying to remember, 3D Classics had Puyo Puyo 2.
And there's the Project Mira minigame, Puyo Puyo 39.
Right, but outside of that, Puyo Pop was really that's getting into semantics, but still, if you want to get into stupid Sega trivia, you could argue that this is the first, full individual retail Puyo Puyo game in North America, outside of compilations and things.
Yeah, and it just surprises me that this is actually happening, In a sense, this is kind of a game changer for Sega in a sense, because, a title like this would never be released 5 or 10 years ago.
Right, and you're our resident Puyo Puyo fanboy, and so, it must really mean a lot for you to have this happen, and also to have them create social media accounts for the franchise, and the mere fact that they do that shows that they're looking at it as a franchise. If this was a one-off game, I can't imagine why they'd make a Puyo Puyo Twitter account. They'd have to have more plans for the franchise in the US.
Right. It's not only a Twitter account, but it's also a Facebook account. And based on how it's worded and stuff like that, it seems to be in general, not specifically for Puyo Puyo Tetris. And Gene, in particular, implied that if Puyo Puyo Tetris does good enough, we may get Puyo Puyo Chronicle, down the line on the 3DS.
Nice. And so I guess my last question for you, I guess this kind of turned into an interview, mainly because George and I our Puyo Puyo knowledge is not deep. But how does the Switch and PS4 versions differ? Do we know anything at this moment, if they do differ?
As far I can tell, the Switch and PS4 versions are the same. Maybe the Switch version might support 8 players, because in theory the Switch can do that with the Joy-Cons, but I'm not sure about that.
We were talking this earlier today about Metacritic and how Sega's actually going up. What do you think the Metacritic will be for Puyo Puyo Tetris? Do you think it will do well? Because right now Yakuza 0 is 86.
Well, I've personally played Puyo Puyo Tetris. I imported it on my PS4, and I can tell you right now, it is a very fun multiplayer game. If you can manage to grab, several people, you can have a really good fun time with that. So, based on that merit alone, I can see it doing very good. But in terms of, actual reception, I don't know. This seems like general, a Metacritic thing, maybe in the 70s or 80s. This is definitely not a terrible game in any way. Maybe some of the modes are kind of iffy. I'm not exactly a fan of Party 2, which is you throw items at each other. It's kind of annoying, honestly. And the single player is kind of whatever.
Yeah, it's worth noting too that I feel like the Nintendo Switch reviews might be weighted because since it's such a small library, people might be expecting more from each game. Like it's coming to the PS4, and I'm sure PS4 owners are like, "Oh, I've got years of PS4 games. This is just another fun game. Cool. 8 out of 10 or something." But this one, it's like there's only 6 Nintendo Switch games out, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
7 out of 10. It's worth noting, too, that it, like I said, it is coming to the PS4. The PS4 version will be $10 less than the Nintendo Switch version. However, the Switch version will be digital, and that price will match the PS4 version. So it's $30 on PS4, $40 on the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch, at least in North America, it will come with keychains. So you get a little Tetris keychain and a Puyo Puyo keychain, and I don't know. I mean, $10 for a couple keychains. I'd say if you're getting a Switch, get the special edition. But if not, I don't think this is a title to get the Switch for.
Now, to be fair, I think the main advantage of both versions is that they are relatively cheap games. Like the Switch is like $30 or $40 depending on where you go, but that's still cheaper than some of the prices announced for the Switch. And meanwhile.
Oh, God.
And the PS4 version is like $30. You can't really argue with that. That's like roughly half the price of a typical AAA title. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, this should be the price of 1-2 Switch, like 30 or 40.
So what is your guys' thoughts on the Switch?
Well, let's see. Let's throw it to our guest in like just a couple sentences. Give us your thoughts on the console.
I like the concept, but at the same time, I'm kind of worried they're trying to do too much at the same time. And likewise, yes, I'm interested in the software, but at the same time, I'm not rushing out because I know that the titles I want, like for example, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 or Super Mario Odyssey and whatnot, those are down the line, so I'm not exactly in a rush to get one.
How about you, George?
I'm cautious.
That was quick. As for me, I like the concept. I dislike the execution. I know in the past, in the comment section here on our YouTube videos, people got really mad when I said I felt burned by the Wii U, but I did, and I'm not going to buy this at launch. I don't think I'm ever going to buy a Nintendo console at launch again after what happened with the Wii U. But
let's leave it off at a negative note, then.
Yeah. What do you guys think in the comments section? Do you like the Nintendo Switch? Will you be getting Puyo Puyo Tetris? Sound off, and if you have a negative opinion, people will probably pile on you.